Good evening. I'm Dr. Tom Caven. I'm here to answer some questions about the new coronavirus vaccine that's come out. First question that we had posed to us is the vaccine really safe? And what about side effects? I will tell you that this is an extraordinarily safe vaccine compared to all the vaccines that we've had. It seems to be a very clean vaccine. The two vaccines that are currently available, the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, are both very similar to each other, and neither one of them contain any actual infectious agents. In other words, they're not a live or killed virus of any sort. So I think they are safe. There's a question about side effects. We are seeing very rarely some allergic reactions. When I say rarely, it's currently estimated to be about 1 in 100,000. Most vaccines, severe allergic reactions are about 1 in a million, so it may be a little more common than some of the other vaccines that have been available. If you find 1 in 100,000 really unacceptable risk, that may be something you discuss with your physician. For most of us, that's an acceptable risk. What we do see very commonly, not the immediate allergic reaction, which tends to occur within the first 15 to 20 minutes. The other reactions tend to take 24 hours or 48 hours to develop. And they're very common, and they include soreness at the injection site, which is usually arm, the deltoid. It may be fatigue, some chills, fever, up to say 100, headaches, and occasionally chills. Those are the common side effects. If anybody is developing respiratory type symptoms, shortness of breath or cough, those are not typical side effects, and those would be things that would be a little more worrisome for the possibility of the actual SARS-CoV infection. Question, do you get a choice which vaccine you get? No, you really don't. Most places that are giving it are going to be giving currently either the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. Neither one are FDA approved now. They're being given under emergency use authorization, or an EUA currently. But as I said earlier, they do seem to be, of the millions of people who've been immunized, very safe. Should it be the same manufacturer for both doses? Most definitely. And I think most places you're going to be vaccinated, when you get your first vaccination, they're going to arrange for you to be scheduled for your second dosage. The next questions get a little more difficult. When would it be available to me? And is there a schedule of when people can receive it? This is a very fast-moving and fast-changing area. And the question really boils down to, it's hard to say when it will be available. People are being rank ordered on their real availability for it. And I can tell you that phase 1A, which is what people have been up till now, are healthcare workers and typically people 75 years in age and greater. Phase 1B, at least what I have written here, is 65 and up, and also people between 16 and 64 with certain medical conditions. I've already seen some modifications to where 1B has been modified in some quarters to be 75 and up. So I think you need to check with local providers for that. 1B, 1B plus is frontline essential workers who are not as involved in direct patient care. And then phase 1C is other essential workers, with phase 2 and higher being really people that are young and no particular complications. there is no real well worked out schedule right now. Unfortunately, although this has been a monumentally great development of a vaccine in very short order, there has not been a great deal, if much, real orchestration of the vaccination, the actual operationalizing of giving the vaccines. Certainly at the federal level, it's kind of fallen to the state level, and the state wasn't really certain when it would be receiving vaccines. So there's a lot of kind of cross currents right now. I can tell you, which is kind of the next question, how do you sign up for the vaccine? This is unfortunately a very complicated answer, and it varies extremely from town to town, region to region, and even within a single town from clinic to clinic. The supply of vaccine is coming kind of sporadically in clumps and fits and starts. And so to my awareness, I don't think that there are really good schedules going out currently. I can tell you in Central Texas, some of the facilities that do or shortly will have it include HEB, Randall's, CVS, Austin Regional Clinic, Travis County Medical Society will have information about different facilities that may have it at that particular time, and then finally checking with your primary care provider. I know all across the state, at least Texas, primary care and other providers have been independently certifying to be available to be distributors and vaccinators of the vaccine. Even if they've gotten the certification, it doesn't mean they've received the vaccine yet to be able to distribute. So it's something you probably just need to call them. Each of them will have their own scheduling, and I think that that's probably going to be, several of these are statewide at least, and some of them national. I know CVS is going to be available in most of the country. Randall's and HEB are available throughout the state. So I think there's a lot of resources available. I think as we proceed through January and certainly through February, there will be more and more available facilities that have the vaccine. You'll be able to get it. Now, next we had a question about whether the vaccine is effective against the new strains of virus that we're hearing about. I can tell you the new strain that's developed in England, it's called the B117 strain, has really a modification to alter the spike protein to where it attaches to your body more efficiently, and that's why it's more transmissible. It does not appear to be a worse case. It does not appear to have a higher death rate. What it does appear to do is be more contagious and more readily transmitted from one person to the next. It is highly likely that the vaccine is effective against this particular strain, and this is the strain that we're seeing in the United States currently already. So that's a good thing that the vaccine does seem to have protection against that. There is currently another second strain, at least it's been identified, that seems to be taking hold, particularly in South Africa. It has not spread widely yet. It has not been identified in the United States that I've heard about. This particular strain, though, has more actual mutations of the spike protein than the original one, and maybe less recognized by antibodies. With that said, the vaccine is what's known as polyclonal. In other words, it allows your body to form antibodies to multiple sites on the spike protein. And because of that, A lot of researchers believe that any new strain would have to have multiple mutations to be able to successfully, you know, pass all the antibody response that the vaccines are going to form. So currently, although no one knows for sure, there's not been the ability to do studies yet. Most authorities are thinking that the vaccines that are currently available, both Pfizer and Moderna, will be effective against both the more common British mutation and the newly described and much less common and much less widespread South African variant. Another question that came to us: if you've had COVID yourself, do you still need the vaccine when it becomes available? I think most authorities are clear, yes, you do. There are an entire host of different antibodies that your body can form when you've been affected with the coronavirus. And the belief is that the antibody response that's formed by the vaccination is actually a stronger antibody response that's more precisely targeted at the spike protein, which is the business end of the virus. The spike protein is the way that this coronavirus invades your body. Without the spike protein, or with a defective spike protein, the virus cannot attack you. I think people are thinking, even if you've had coronavirus, you should be immunized. The question is when. There's no firm data on this, but most people that I've heard render opinions, I believe Dr. Fauci is saying about 90 days after your infection. Because too soon after that, and you may have blocking antibodies that might adhere to the spike proteins and never induce an actual second wave of immunity. How soon after the first dose am I immune? A very good question. As you know, both Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines required 2 doses. The new AstraZeneca vaccine, which is not available yet, has not yet received emergency use authorization in the United States, and works on a completely different biological principle. I believe AstraZeneca only requires 1 vaccine. But back to the first question. After your first dose, within 8 to 14 days, you're going to have some antibody response. There have not been good studies on this yet because the vaccine is really designed and is studied for a 2-dose vaccine. But most authorities are thinking you are probably going to have somewhere around a 60 or 70% immunity after the first dose. Not bad, and actually about as good as most vaccines ever get. However, after your second dose of either the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine, you should have the 95% immunity that was described in the studies. And not only that, the 95% is for just developing COVID at all. Both studies tended to suggest that the vaccines had very high, approaching 100% efficacy against severe enough disease to be hospitalized or certainly in the intensive care unit. How long after the second dose before I can live normally again? This is a very difficult question. And I'm going to combine this with the second question here. Can I still spread it to unvaccinated people after I'm immunized? I think the concern is after you've been vaccinated, it is unknown at this time whether, even if you're personally protected against the virus, whether you can harbor the virus in your nose or in your throat and still be able to pass it along to people that have not been vaccinated. So everyone is recommending we continue with masking, hand washing, and social distancing even after you've been immunized. I think life will become more normal, and I think you may legitimately feel protected in circumstances after you've been vaccinated and a couple of weeks has passed. You may legitimately be able to place yourself in some circumstances that now you would be avoiding. But to say living normally, like going to a Longhorn football game or going to Austin City Limits Festival or being in a large crowd, is probably still going to be a while. I think it's going to probably be closer to the point when we believe we've got herd immunity, which is when about 70% of people have some level of immunity. I did have a question this week because healthcare workers have been getting the vaccine before the general public. If we had a meeting of all completely vaccinated healthcare workers, could they meet without having to socially distance and without having to wear masks? And that's a difficult question. Everyone there should be, in theory, immune. But again, it's unknown whether all those people are going to be able to harbor the virus and pass it on to other people. And the possibility still exists that one person there could have the virus, could pass it along to other people who may not be personally susceptible to the virus, but then could spread it to other people who are susceptible. So with that said, I think most authorities are still recommending we all mask, distance, and hand wash for the foreseeable future, even after vaccination. How long does the vaccine protect me? This is a very good question. And I think you probably have heard some reports that your antibody immunity wanes or drops off within a variable amount of time after the vaccine. Without question, you're going to lose some antibody titers over the next 90 to 180 days. However, people who've been vaccinated have a population of what's called B cells. These are specific lymphocytes that are able to generate antibody. These are going to be activated, and they're going to be very specifically targeted against coronavirus. So even after your antibodies wane, your B cells will be able to crank out effective antibodies against a coronavirus challenge in very high titers extremely quickly, much different than in the unimmunized state. And then finally, there's an entirely different type of immunity that we all have called cell-mediated immunity or Tcell mediated immunity, which basically does not involve antibodies specifically at all. It involves T cells, which are able to actually destroy an offending infectious agent like coronavirus. We know for a fact that T cell immunity is present in patients who've been immunized. In fact, it's been interestingly discovered that some patients actually have some T cell immunity to coronavirus even before they've been immunized or infected with it. So it's another whole avenue. That immune system is not dependent on your antibody levels and does not seem to drop off as quickly after infection. And then finally, so the short answer to that is even after your antibody titers fall, even if they fall, even after they fall, you are still going to be protected by the vaccine against coronavirus in all likelihood. And then finally, can pregnant women get the vaccine? This is an unequivocal yes. In fact, there's evidence that coronavirus can be especially hard on pregnant women, and there seems to be, as near as been determined, not the risk to the infant that there is from the infection. So authorities are recommending that pregnant ladies do get vaccinated. Thank you for your attention today, and God bless you.